I'm Sharon James, Leadership Tallahassee Class 21, a partner with the Law Office of Berger Singerman and Chair of Leadership Tallahassee. Leadership Tallahassee is pleased to continue our Tallahassee Leads Here monthly programming. This series was designed to offer our membership and the community a way to access leadership development and information in an engaging and interactive way. If you have attended a Tallahassee Leads Here, you know this goes beyond the typical webinar experience. With that in mind, please refer to the chat box for a few guidelines to help maximize this training for you and other attendees. Although we never imagined the scenario that was the catalyst for the implementation of this series, the global pandemic, the current Leadership Tallahassee strategic plan outlines explore digital ways to connect and engage as a strategy for increasing engagement of LT participants. We are proud to offer this series. A special thank you to CarePoint Health and Wellness for being a sponsor of this Tallahassee Leads Here series. And here is a message from them.
When it comes to your health, you and your family deserve safe, quality care you can feel good about. Right here in Tallahassee, you can visit your primary care doctor, get lab work and x-rays done, visit the dentist, and pick up your prescriptions all in one convenient location. CarePoint accepts most insurance and Medicare plans. CarePoint Health and Wellness Center, the region's only comprehensive healthcare facility. Contact us today to schedule your new patient appointment.
Again, thank you to CarePoint Health and Wellness for their sponsorship and their support. With that, I'd like to introduce our speaker for today's session, Denise Wilson, Leadership Tallahassee Class 29, Senior Vice President, Director of Star University, Capital City Bank, and Leadership Tallahassee Board of Governors member. Denise Wilson, take it from here.
Thank you, Sharon. And thank you all. I'm looking forward to spending the next 45 minutes with you exploring the topic of positive leadership. Today, more than any time in recent history, it's time for leaders of all kinds to lead with positivity. One of the things I value about our Leadership Tallahassee family is that we are a group of incredibly diverse leaders who do make a difference in our community and in our organizations. And there's differences in what we all do. There's differences in leading a corporation, a small business, a nonprofit, a university, a movement. I could go on with the different kinds of things that we lead. But whatever you lead, positive leadership can make a significant impact on your success, or lack of positive leadership could lead to failure. So let's talk about positive leadership. But before we talk about what it is, I want to start with what it is not. Many people will shrug the word positive off with a disapproving label and say, oh, that's touchy-feely, that's soft, that's that fluffy stuff. They think that positive means having a naive approach to business or a naive approach to life in general. For some people, it brings to mind blind optimism, which I am a little bit guilty of myself, but I try not to do it too much. But it also brings to mind things like ignoring challenges, lack of accountability, or not measuring results. That's simply not true. People with that perspective tell themselves leadership is tough, it's serious, it's results oriented, and to see it as otherwise is just plain foolish. Well, that's wrong. Positive leadership does not ignore or even turn a blind eye to the real challenges, the negativity, or failure. It's based on seeing full reality. It's based in reality, which even in the most trying of times can include potential and can even include attaining greatness. So for anybody who's skeptical or still iffy on the fluff factor, positive leadership is evidence-based science. This book, Positivity by Dr. Barbara Fredrickson, I'm not sure what year it was published. It's a really good book, but she's been a leader in the field for over 30 years. And as I was doing my research, it is a reference for a number of books on positive leadership. Her research proves that positivity opens us up. The positive emotions used in positive, I'm going to get positive wrong about several hundred times while I'm talking, so I apologize. It opens our hearts and our minds. and it makes us more receptive and more creative. Positive leadership focuses on seeing and maximizing potential and success. And you can, I would hope that you would agree with me that in today's challenging climate, we need it more than ever. It's so easy to feel a lack of control and to even allow that negativity, that fear, that frustration to creep in. But we as leaders, regardless of what we lead, must be intentional about positive leadership. Only then can we turn even the most difficult of times into opportunities. So what are we going to spend the next little bit talking about? We're going to talk about 3 key things that positive leaders do that really make a difference. The first one that we're going to talk about is positive leaders are realistic. They see things as they are. They don't see them as worse. They don't see them as better. They gather the facts. They know the deal. Positive leaders don't go around with rose-colored glasses singing Kumbaya. And at the same time, positive leaders don't go around with a magnifying glass to dig out meaningless imperfections. Positive leadership is grounded in reality. And don't get me wrong, we absolutely must confront any negativity we come across, but we shouldn't dwell on it. We deal with it and we move on. But it's because we have to overcome negativity, adversity, and problems that we should be positive. And again, it's not about fake positivity, it's real stuff that makes great leaders great. So I've got some tips for making sure that we stay grounded in reality, but before I share, I want you to first ask yourself, how do you ensure that you're really seeing reality? And if any of you are sitting at your desk and want to chat, share with us. How do you ensure that you're really seeing reality? Paula, I agree. We all need a little positivity right now. Well, I'm not seeing chats come through, so I'm going to go ahead, but I'm going to continue to look at the chats. Having honest conversations with my teams. Kim, I agree. Get input and perspective from others. Surround yourself with people who will tell you the truth. Being surrounded by a bunch of yes men or women never got us anywhere. Listen and talk with others who think differently than me. These are all really, really good ways of making sure that we know what reality is. Team partners. The closer to the front line a leader is, I think the easier it is for them to be realistic. They experience it every single day. But the more removed from the front lines you are as a leader, the easier it is to think you know what's going on, but the harder it is to really know. And I love seeing that example. Surround yourself with people who are going to tell you the truth. And as several of you said, how do we learn reality? How do we know? Well, we ask questions and we listen. A great example that I saw during these challenging times, it was one day in May, and I was working in my home office and my phone rang, and it was Bill Smith. For those of you who don't know, he's our CEO. And of course, I'm like, oh, what does Bill want? Not that he never calls me, but you know, when the CEO calls, you kind of sit up a little straighter. But he just called to see how I was. He wanted to see how things were going, what challenges we were facing, me individually and my team at the bank. It wasn't a very long phone call, but it made a huge impact on me. And I later learned that Bill wasn't alone. Many of the C-suite leaders made calls to associates. And I'm sure that the things that they learned helped shape their responses to the pandemic and to the other challenges that we're facing. I am all about sharing resources, and in 45 minutes, you can't share a whole lot of resources, but I do want to share a helpful tool to you that's called Meet to Learn. And Amanda's putting a copy of the handout in the chat if you'd like to look at it later. But Meet to Learn is by Arbinger Institute, and another really good book about positive leadership is Outward Mindset by the Arbinger Institute. It's one of my favorites. But they have something that's called Meet to Learn, and it's a one-on-one thing. You have a meeting with someone else. It's a series of questions, and you can ask them of a colleague, of a direct report, of a fellow community leader, and they really help you understand the reality of that individual and of what they're going through. When I was in the workshop, we did this with complete strangers. We had these conversations, and my favorite question was, how can I be helpful to you in your role? And I think about that in terms of Leadership Tallahassee and how we work together. And we started as complete strangers, but we left and it was amazing all of the things that people from different areas of the country could help one another with. So think about how powerful that can be in an organization or in a community if we all just asked that question. But back to reality. Understanding reality, no matter how good or bad it is the first step and a key to positive leaderships. Positive leaders don't brush the negative under the rug, they deal with it. So how do they do that? How do they deal with it? Well, first of all, we've talked about they see reality. So step number 2 is they have vision. So they see things how they are, and then positive leaders imagine what it could be. They're able to see a way forward. They can see how things can be better than they are. It's a vision, and they share that vision. After assessing the reality, positive leaders look for possibilities. What do I need to do to make things better? What are we facing, and how can I best manage or lead in this situation? And what can we do to come out the other side as best as we possibly can? And I think one of the differences of the vision of a positive leader versus the vision of, I don't want to say a negative leader, but a non-positive leader is that they allow themselves to think bigger. How could we come out of this even better than we were before? Not just trudging through the challenges, but how can we take these changes and come out the other side much better? And I think about leaders who have that positive vision, and I think it really relates a lot to our mindset as individuals. Is our mindset one that sees possibilities in our situations, possibilities in our people, and possibilities in our organizations? Or are we people who see and maybe even dwell on the problems? So I want you to kind of think about, ask yourself, what is your mindset as a leader? And then what are some things that you can do to positively influence your mindset and your vision? How can you positively influence your mindset and your vision? Failure is not an option. I love it. Oh, and at the end, I'll put the name of all of the books and the authors in the chat. We'll make sure that that's in there for you. We got a request there. I think there's a little bit of a delay in the chat, so I'm going to keep going, but I'm going to look over and check out the chat as we go. Let's see, here we go. You have to constantly educate yourself, see what others are doing, push yourself to engage in areas you don't know a lot about. I love that because we can learn from each other. What do they say that, no, I'm not going to think of the right term, but copying somebody is the greatest compliment. I'm getting it wrong, but I think you know what I mean. So when it comes to setting vision, one of the tools that I love that really has a foundation in positive psychology and positive leadership is called appreciative inquiry. Have any of you guys ever heard of appreciative inquiry? It is such a wonderful tool. It can be done as an individual exercise or as part of a group brainstorm. I often use this with my team as part of our strategic planning process. And I've also facilitated it for other teams in the bank. It's really, really powerful. And we're also going to have a handout that tells you a little bit more about how you can learn about appreciative inquiry in the chat. But I want to just tell you some of the basics of it, because it is such a great way to kind of marry that realistic and the vision, because together you're coming up with what that future can be. So there are 4 key steps. The first is discover. The second is dream. The third is design, and the fourth is deliver. And yes, these aren't mine, but I have a love for alliteration. Anything that's got an alliteration, I enjoy it. So let's start with discover. In discover, you look for what is good with what is happening now, and you really have to have that positive mindset. We don't dwell on what's not working in appreciative inquiry. We look at what is good about what's going on now. And when things are going well, what's happening? What's causing things to go well? What are the things that perpetuate the positive outcomes, the positive activity? Then we go on to the next step. And this is one that's my favorite, but it can also be one of the most challenging when you're trying to get your group to go along with you. And this is dream. And this is where that vision piece really is. You throw caution to the wind and you really dream about what could be. You know, don't think about budgets. I mean, obviously we have to go back and think about budgets, but really think about if it were the best it could ever be, what would it look like? You know, this is really, it's worth the investment of getting people there that, you know, that are thinking only tiny steps ahead instead of great leaps ahead. But when you spend the time, it's where the magic happens, is where we dream. Then the third step is design. And in design, you combine the dream with the reality and you create a workable plan. It's your way forward. And then the final step takes us to the third thing that positive leaders need to do, and that is take action. And in appreciative inquiry, it's called deliver. So let's look a little bit of what we've talked about. Positive leaders are grounded in reality. They see things how they are, and they have vision. They have a mindset for possibilities and a positive way forward. And then finally, positive leaders take action. They take action to bring that positive vision to a reality. Positive leaders focus on solutions. At Capital City Bank, we used to hold them in person. We haven't started doing them virtually, but we have something that we've done for several years called the Leadership Speaker Series. And we have different bank leaders, and we've also started having some community leaders come talk with our associates about a variety of leadership topics. Well, one that really stood out to me was over 2 years ago, and it's one that Beth Quorum delivered. And it has stuck with me, and I've even seen it on other people's boards in their office. And she said, be known for the problems that you solve. And I mean, it's such a short statement, but think about, what do we want to be known for as leaders? We want to be known for that leader that takes action and solves problems. Be known for the problems that you solve. Be known for taking action, not for just talking, not for complaining, but for taking action. Positive leaders also ask themselves, what action or inaction is appropriate in this situation? What should we do? And just as importantly, what should we not do? I like that. Be known for the problems you solve. Awesome. So former president and chief executive officer of the Ford Motor Company, his name is Alan, and I hope I'm saying his last name right, Mulally. He said, and then this is a direct quote, positive leadership, conveying the idea that there is always a way forward, is so important, because that is what you are here for, to figure out how to move the organization forward. Positive leaders see and create a brighter and better future. They see what's possible, and then they take the next steps to rally and unite people to create it. Every invention, project, creation, and transformation starts with an idea, an imagination, and a vision of what's possible. I had to read that to you guys word for word. I've read it several times, and it just really, I think, encapsulated for me what these three things are: the being grounded in reality, the having a vision, and the making it happen. But before we leave action, action doesn't have to be massive in order to be meaningful. I think sometimes we think about a huge movement, but it doesn't have to be big. Oftentimes it's smaller actions when repeated or done together that can have a huge difference. And I'd like to share an example of one with you that happened at the bank. We chose to close early on June 19th to commemorate Juneteenth. And as you can imagine, probably not all of our clients were big fans of this. So our call center manager, he had the reality of recognizing that this could be an issue. And he said, you know what, I need to make this as easy as I can for my team. So he sent some talking points out, and he told them, some people are not going to, to agree with this, and some people are going to be unhappy. I am in 100% support of what the bank is doing, and I am happy to talk to any of our clients. So if you have a client that's challenging or difficult or wants to talk to someone, I will make myself available to talk to the clients. And I thought, wow, that's positive leadership. But he didn't leave it there. He took it one step further, and he said, these are really trying times that we're in, and we're all experiencing it differently. Well, it is difficult, but we experience it differently. I am here to talk to anyone who would like to talk about what's going on now and how the bank is responding to it. And I thought, wow, I hope that my team feels comfortable coming and talking with me about these kinds of things, but I've never actually given them that invitation to do it. So that's one of the things too that I wanted us to ask ourselves is, how have we taken action as positive leaders to invite the people that we lead to talk with us? And also to ask ourselves, is there an action I need to take? So I'm going to give you all just a quick minute to jot down what are some actions maybe you've taken, or what are some actions that you need to take. Lester, the difference between large and small actions is what causes many good ideas from being executed. The accumulation of several small changes is so much better than a huge idea that never happened. Amen. Amen. Good stuff. Okay, I'm not seeing any more chats come in, so I am just going to continue on. So being realistic, having vision, and taking action. This type of positive leadership doesn't live in just one sector. Positive leadership is just as necessary and valuable in our businesses, in our communities, in politics, and in so much more. I don't have this book, but in his book, Positive Leadership, John Gordon says, we are not positive because life is easy. We are positive because life can be hard. And I'm going to say that one more time because it really struck a chord with me. We are not positive because life is easy. We are positive because life can be hard. And I think we can all agree that we're living and leading in extremely challenging times. And speaking of extremely challenging times, we've probably all experienced a range of leadership actions and reactions. Some that have been very positive, companies giving their people bonuses and all sorts of things, but then also companies that have said, oh, I'm just going to furlough everybody, not going to pay for anything. And granted, different companies and businesses are in different positions, but regardless of where you are, when we lead with positive leadership, we look at how we can come out the other side, not just how this is impacting us today. So as I was preparing my notes for today, I thought, okay, what is a great example of positive leadership, particularly being realistic, having a vision, and taking action. And I bet as I say that, the same person is probably coming to your mind, and that is Martin Luther King. He was realistic. He saw things as they were. And in that time and place, it wasn't pretty. And he had a dream. I would love to do the whole speech for you here now, but we probably don't have time for that. But I pulled out one sentence. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. I mean, I get choked up just thinking about all of that. He had vision. He had positive vision. He saw things how they could be. He inspired and led others to do the same. And then finally, he took action. He was a formidable leader, but he was a nonviolent leader. And he had the gift of sharing his vision and inspiring others to take meaningful action too. So I'm going to look over at the chat. Positivity is a choice. Amen. We choose. It's a mindset. Barbara, we're in control of our choice to be positive or to be negative. Absolutely. So what we're going to do next is, I've been talking a lot and I want to hear from you guys. As I was preparing for this, I kept coming up with this example and that example and this attribute and that attribute. And I thought, no, I want to hear from us as a collective. So when you think about what it takes to be a positive leader, to be a leader who assesses reality, creates vision, and takes positive action, there are a lot of other skills, attributes, behaviors, and even mindsets that positive leaders must exhibit and or possess. So for the activity, you are going to be broken into a breakout group. And I want you to brainstorm a list of as many as you want. Skills, attributes, behaviors. You can jot them down on a piece of paper or you can put it in the chat. But when we all come back, what I would like for you to do is have a scribe. We're going to have one big whiteboard and we want to capture all of these things so we can have it to reflect on later. So your scribe will come back and on the whiteboard, they will put your list of things that a positive leader needs to do. In addition to selecting a scribe, please select a spokesperson. And that spokesperson is going to come back and they're going to share 1 or 2 of the key things that your group came up with. And I know you're all going to come up with more than 1 or 2, but for time's sake, I'm going to ask each group to share 1 or 2. And you're going to need more than 1 or 2 because you know a group is going to take yours. There's just no way around it. Somebody's going to take one of your favorites. So also in your groups, if you have some examples to share with one another, share those examples in your groups. And hopefully we'll have time for a few of those examples when we come back and debrief after the group. So before we get started, Amanda, do you have any other instructions for the breakout groups?
That's it. I've just adjusted it to 6 minutes and they'll get a 60-second warning before the breakout group closes.
All right. Sounds great. Well, have fun. Thanks, guys.
And you'll just select join on your screen and you've been broken up into random groups right now. Enjoy.
All right, I will. I was in breakout session 8 and Tina Pate. We had a great group. We talked about not only being able to cast the vision, but it's necessary to be confident and decisive, have that open door where you're willing to receive input, you're encouraging others to, be a part of the process. And then, so that's good listening skills. And then we talked about making certain that your behaviors match what you say. So if you're trying to create an environment to allow input or a team environment, making certain that you're modeling that leadership through your behaviors and creating those opportunities. And then, of course, in vision casting, that involves being fearless.
Awesome. Thank you, Tina.
Mm-hmm.
Who's next? I see a lot of good ones in the, oh, wow. Becky, your group really has a bunch in the chat.
I can go. This is Roxanne. We were group 1, and Paula put ours in even before we were asked to scribe. So it's up there a little bit further above. But we talked about honesty, empathy, being fearless or brave, and integrity. And we kind of explored like what does like empathetic honesty look like, and we were talking about like in the era of COVID, being honest about what you do and don't know, like as you're making decisions, but saying like this is what like science is showing us, and here's the things that we don't know, and admitting to that, to not knowing, not being the all-knowing authority, and then taking care of people is the empathy part of it. So doing what's best for the people.
And that transparency is huge, and people can tell whether you're truly being transparent or not. Thank you. And I didn't realize y'all had numbers, so we can do that. We did group 1. Tina, what group were you in? Group 8? Okay, let's go to group 2.
I'll speak on behalf of group 2. So we kind of came down to communication, having just solid communication, and it kind of goes across all of those D's that you talked about, from, you know, describing the vision all the way to executing it. You got to have solid communication throughout that. And I know from my own experience, any of the big projects that I've done, I mean, yeah, communication's crucial. One that has been brought up several times is the bravery part, or I call it courageousness. If you're going to tackle a big problem and it's going to be impacting a lot of people, you got to have that courage to break the norm. You know, the only way you're going to make change is not do the same thing that everyone else is doing. And so, and that's been, for me at least, one of the biggest things when I try to do something that's quite different from what's out there. So, yeah, I would say bravery or courageousness for me is one of the ones.
I agree. Thank you, Lester. Thank you, group 2. How about group 3? I'm trying to look at my camera and not at y'all, but it's hard sometimes. Okay, group 4.
So group 4, we said a number of the things that have already been said, but just to run through a couple others, in addition to bravery and having a willingness, being uncomfortable, being a transformational leader, being willing to learn new things, bridging the gap, being a great listener, but also we really also talked about the importance of being authentic. Authenticity leads to trust. And so that's just something, in addition to everything else, a positive leader should always be authentic.
And I made myself a little list here too, and trust was one I hadn't heard yet, but that is on my list. I think that's huge. You've got to have that both ways. So thank you guys. Group 5. Or group 3 can jump in if you're unmuted. I know I sometimes can't figure out how to unmute myself.
Not sure which breakout session we are.
Okay, go for it.
I thought we were 6. I have no idea.
Go for it.
Ed, I will go ahead. Positive leader needs to lead by example, set the tone, realize that people are watching you in your positivity and your leadership roles. And we always talked about passion, that when you have passion, that you choose joy in every situation. But those are the ones that we kind of came up with as a group.
Love it. Thank you. Okay, the next group.
Group 6 was small but mighty. It was Jim Hunt and me. And we focused on the person. Sometimes it's difficult to think about positivity or characteristics sort of in the abstract. So we asked ourselves, what people do we know who we think are sort of the personification of that? And then what is it about them that made them positive, or that we can choose the characteristics based on the person? And 2 people that popped into our mind were Sandy Dalembert and Marjorie Turnbull, who had causes, sort of relentless toward their causes. In Sandy's case, you know, sort of restorative justice. In Marjorie's case, just huge emphasis on the community and making the whole community better, whether it's education or human services or whatever. A couple of the other characteristics that we particularly identified with them were choosing something that makes a difference and choosing something that maximizes their talents. I mean, these are two sort of champions or heroes in our community, and they chose big stuff that they wanted to work on. The last thing that Jim and I talked about a lot was the perspective, putting themselves in the other person's shoes and seeing where that person was in order to help identify how progress, leadership, action can happen. So I'll stop there.
Thank you, Ken and Jim. And I think that's a really key point. We can learn from one another. We can learn from seeing the great things that one another are doing. The groups that haven't shared yet, is there anything that you have that's different than the groups that have already shared? Anything you have to add? Elizabeth, you're nodding your head.
RJ's got some great
RJ,
stuff.
okay, go for it, RJ.
Group 7, we have calm in the storm. In the chat, I put duck in parentheses because I'm sure everyone's heard the analogy about how you see the duck. It looks like it's just gliding on the water, but underneath it's paddling furiously. So we think it's important to stay calm because chaos breeds chaos. Bart, who's also in our group, gave us a great thing called the say-do gap. So the difference between what you say and what you do needs to be very, very small, which I think everyone else has mentioned trust, but I love the way he phrased it as the say-do gap. You know, don't make promises that you can't keep. Accept responsibility with grace, like how I was the last one to say not it. So I had to be the scribe and the reporter for my group, but I smiled and positively said, okay, I'll do it. And then the last one is the leader gives your team credit for the success, but takes the credit for the missteps and the failures. Oh, and there's one more. I can't remember if we said this one though, but willing to both give and take feedback. So you have to be a good listener and listen to your team. And so we had Barbara, Elizabeth, Bart, and me.
Great team. All right. Did we miss anybody?
Team 11.
Okay, go for it.
So, erasing what everybody else has said, we've come down to knowing how to get others to listen and moderate and facilitate that impartiality to one's own ideas while remaining calm and not angry. I know in the last for years, how does one get a group, a board, a meeting to listen to each other so we can hear each other without it always being a, I can only hear one person at a time, but how do I moderate that group so everybody can hear everybody, and the old 1 + 1 = 3 or more. So,
all right.
And tenacity. You have to be tenacious.
Without a doubt. Thank you.
Those two were additional.
Anybody else?
Yeah, this is Joy. We had our group 2, we were group 10, and we had a lot of you guys mentioned a lot of ours already. But the one thing that we really hung on to, which I didn't think anybody would have, was consensus building, moving together collectively as one. And you've got to kind of listen to a little bit what somebody has mentioned before, but getting everybody on the same page. And again, just building that group team as a group.
Awesome. Am I missing anybody else? Okay, Amanda told me that I have to end on time. So I have a challenge. I always like to end everything with a challenge. So keeping in mind the characteristics, skills, and attributes that your groups just came up with, and the things that we talked about as far as seeing the vision and taking the action and being realistic, I want you to ask yourself this question. What will you do differently and better as a result of what we've talked about today? You don't have to chat it, but just ask yourself, what will you do differently or better as a result of what we've talked about today? So thank you so much for allowing me to share today, and thanks for sharing your experiences. When we as a collective Leadership Tallahassee group demonstrate this positive leadership, we really can make a big difference. So I thank you all for your time and for letting me be with you here today, and I'm going to turn it over to Amanda.
Yes, thank you so much, Denise. Real quick, we have surveys that follow this event, and Denise said a couple months ago, I don't know what I'm going to talk on, but something positive. So I gave her that challenge and she delivered more than I could have ever imagined. So thank you all for being here. This has been interactive, wonderful. This is being recorded, as well as all of the resources will be emailed to all of the people who registered for the event, and we also post it on Facebook. So with that, there'll be a survey. If you have anything you'd like to speak on for our September program, please put that in the survey results. And then the last thing I will say is that on August 19th, we have a presentation. Kim Kelling's here today. She's speaking, Marcus Nicholas and Corey Melton, on the Aspire program that our community is putting forward. So they're going to tell us more about that. And it's going to be really informative and wonderful. So thank you. And I hope that you'll join us on August 19th to learn more about Aspire and what that means for our community. And with that, thank you all for being here, and have a great day, and go lead positively.